After Sunday's presidential election, is Ukraine moving closer to peace or to civil war? Hours after the polls closed, pro-Russian separatists taking over the airport of the eastern city of Donetsk, government forces then flushing them out in the heaviest fighting since the crisis began. Dozens killed. That fighting, you could say it's the first order of business for oligarch Petro Poroshenko, the pro-Maidan billionaire elected in the first round. We're going to look at the tough choices ahead and where Ukraine's chocolate king stands on reconciliation with Russia and Moscow's demand for increased autonomy for the country's Russian-speaking regions. Then there's the question of Ukraine's ultimate destiny. How will a nation in turmoil since November, that since lost Crimea, come out of it all? Today in the France 24 debate, will Ukraine experience closure or civil war? With us to talk about it, Euromaidan activist Anna Garmesh. Thank you for being back with us. Thanks as well to Femin activist Ina Shevchenko. Reporter Catherine Field joins us again. Nice to see you.
Good evening. And
from Kiev, Volodymyr Ishenko of the Center for Society Research. France 24's Armin Georgian is also in the Ukrainian capital. We'll be touching base with him in a moment. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter. Our hashtag F24debate. The death toll continues to rise from the assaults triggered by Monday's takeover of Donetsk airport by separatists. France 24's Rob Parsons and James Andre witnessed Monday's fighting, the worst of Ukraine's 6-month crisis.
War stalks the leafy streets on the edge of Donetsk airport. Separatist fighters had tried to seize control of the airports during the night. Now they've been sucked into a battle for survival. Ukrainian paratroopers have arrived to reinforce the National Guard. Nerves are on edge as a rebel unit inches cautiously towards the airport. Everything is suspect, even a taxi. If anybody had any thoughts that this conflict was going to die down after the elections, they can forget about that now. This is the first time we've seen such intense conflict so close to Donetsk. The situation is very unclear. There's been a lot of shooting all around us. In the confusion of battle, civilians appear dazed.
Take away your car.
I have a question. My parents are there.
Move your car.
Ukrainian aircraft join the fight.
This is disgusting. This is horrible.
You're afraid?
Yes, I'm afraid.
Across town, more fighting. Civilians killed in a gun battle by the railway station.
There were explosions, two there by the flower pots and another one here, which ripped off the head of a woman. Her son was with her and he was screaming. He was cut by shell splinters.
They were shooting all day. There were planes. Would you want me to tell you that I'm scared? Really scared.
As night begins to fall on Donetsk and the rain clouds thicken, there's a sense here that eastern Ukraine stands on the brink of something awful. Those that have not yet given up hope are praying for a miracle.
All right, that report filed after the worst of Monday's fighting. Anna Garmesh, is Ukraine on the brink of something awful?
I really hope not. A new president has been elected, and at least, well, hopefully he will be able to bring some sort of peace. We don't really know, obviously, but at least now nobody can tell that Ukraine does not have a legitimate president or a legitimate government for that matter.
Volodymyr Ishenko, what do you make of the timing of this fighting around Donetsk?
No, I would say that the legitimacy of Poroshenko is evident only for those regions who were actually able to vote for him. And these were not the regions of Donetsk and Lugansk, which are actually mainly controlled by the separatists. And even in those districts in Donetsk and Lugansk where the elections were possible, only a tiny minority actually came to the elections. Many people, as according to the polls made on Sunday, many people said that they actually have political reasons not to come to these elections. So actually, I really doubt that Poroshenko is seen as a legitimate president for Donbass people, and that it's his election will be just something to calm down them. They won't surrender because of that.
All right, at his first press conference since Sunday's vote, Petro Poroshenko ruling out any negotiations with those who took over the airport.
They're just murderer, they're just a bandit, they're just a killer, they're just a terrorist. In no civilized country of the world, nobody have a negotiation with a terrorist.
Ina Shevchenko, is that the right tone to be employing?
Well, I think that even though I will not be one of the first supporters of Poroshenko as a political personality, but I think that in such situation, fighting already for 6 months, I will remind that it's another side, it's another country intervened an independent state of Ukraine, and I think such a position is definitely correct in such a moment. This president definitely knows whatever his personal plans would be, but this president definitely knows that that the people, they will keep an eye on him like never before in history of independent Ukraine.
So for you, those that are attacking in Donetsk are foreigners?
Well, I think that it's not for me. I think that it's not me who is gonna give you some facts. I think that those facts were shared by journalists who are there, by international observers who know who are those troops, from where they sent. They're sent from Russia, from Chechnya, and I think it's clear that there is no point anymore to discuss. Is it a civil war between Ukrainians, or it's an intervention of another country? And I think that here cannot be point. And about the previous question of you about presidential election, I think that the last comment that we just heard from Ukraine, I think it's just not actual anymore, because in fact this presidential election really showed how Ukrainian people and Ukrainian nation is united. Apart from the fact that Poroshenko got 55%. 80% of Ukrainians voted for independent Ukraine, because if we will put all their percentage of Tymoshenko and other candidates pro-independence of Ukraine and those who were pro-European integration, it will be 80% of Ukrainians.
But there was no voting in parts of the east and south.
Well, there were some. I think that there was some in Donetsk. From 22 polling stations, 9 still were working. But it's not a fault of the government, or it's not a fault of Ukrainians or something. It was because of the military action there.
Armin Georgian, what's the view in Kiev today on how Petro Poroshenko so far is handling this worst fighting again we've seen since the crisis began that's taking place around Donetsk?
Well, just a very quick reaction first to what Anna Garmash was saying there about foreign fighters. I do actually have some details on that, because I was listening to a press conference a little while ago in this very building where I am, given by Vladislav Seleznyov, who is the spokesperson for this anti-terrorist operation, as Kiev calls it. And he did confirm that, according to his information, there are fighters from the Caucasus in the east. He didn't explicitly mention Chechens. He didn't mention that they may be sent by Mr. Kadyrov. That's obviously been the speculation, but he certainly does say that there are fighters from the Caucasus here. To answer your question about Poroshenko, I haven't seen really from talking to people today anyone's really being very anything other than a great sense of foreboding. Although he did get this very impressive in many ways result in the very first round, I didn't get a sense of people being gung-ho at all, or saying, yes, you've got to go in there and kill the terrorists. Nothing like that. They were just very somber. I was talking to people on Maidan, the square just behind me, earlier in the day, and they were saying this is very, very bad what's happening in the east, even though obviously they do understand that there's a price to pay if Petro Poroshenko is to eventually restore the government's control in the east of the country.
Volodymyr Ishenko, a fair assessment there of the mood right now in the Ukrainian capital?
Ukrainian capital is not actually the only important theme in Ukraine. We actually have to think about what Donbas people are thinking about Poroshenko. And to add about the elections results, Poroshenko was elected on the elections with the lowest turnout of voters ever in independent Ukraine. Only 60% of people came to the elections, and this is much less than during the elections in 2010, in 2004, in the 90s. And turnout was low not only in Donbas and Lugansk, where actually were objective reasons, and some people could fear to come to the electoral precincts, but also in Odessa and in Kharkov, their turnout was less than 50%. And so I cannot agree that Poroshenko can be seen as a national unifying leader. And actually, he has just basically two options now. Either to escalate the civil war, which will lead to a big blood. In this big blood, the ordinary people of Ukraine would not win in any case, or he will have to do negotiations with the separatists. And all that rhetorics about no negotiations with terrorists, it's the governments do not negotiate with the terrorists until these terrorists become the legitimate power at some territory. And those Donetsk separatists actually have some success in that. And according to the polls made in the beginning of May, 56% of Donbas people actually seeing this uprising as a people's revolt, not as an intervention from Russia, not as a terrorist action. They do support their claims, and this separatist movement has a mass base in Donbas.
All right, so sharp divisions within Ukraine. Let's give you a reaction. We've been getting many from you on Twitter. We asked the question, can Poroshenko deliver stability? The answer from one viewer, it depends on NATO's right message to Ukraine, either democratic referendums or, he says, the final European war. Let's give you a couple of international reactions. U.S. President Barack Obama sending a phone call of congratulations to the newly elected president of Ukraine. The Kremlin warning Kiev this Tuesday against the use of force, a warning echoed by the Russian foreign minister who spoke in the company of his Turkish counterpart.
If they are counting on suppressing resistance in the southeast with the help of a heavily armed army, the National Guard, right sector and the rest, before Poroshenko's expected inauguration and supposedly victorious visit, I don't think that this will create good conditions for a warm welcome in the Donetsk region. The military action has to be stopped immediately.
Catherine Field, what's your reaction there to the words of Sergei Lavrov?
I think the military action does have to be stopped. It was necessary to clear the airport, but there does have to be negotiations. You cannot have so many rebels or opponents without talking to them. The gun is not the way to solve this. It's just on such a knife edge at the moment, it could go either way, and really going in heavy-handed, even tougher, is going to be even harder then to pull back.
Anna Garmesh?
I really think that, well, in the first place, we should really know who are the people in Donetsk, who is fighting, who is not fighting, what's actually happening. There are several categories of people. There is a very small part of them who are really heavily armed. Some of them are obviously foreign, some of them aren't, but there's just a very little portion of those people. They're very visible because, once again, heavily armed, extremely active, and there is a large part of population, people who don't really do anything. They're confused right now, a lot. They're really confused because they were maybe unhappy with the Kiev government.
But you heard Volodymyr Ishenko quoting those polls that show that there is genuine popular support for the separatists.
Well, it depends on the polls, because I've seen recent polls asking the question, do you want to be part of Ukraine, or do you want to be part of a separate country, or Russia? And 75% of people from those regions actually supported the fact of being part of Ukraine. In other words, there is a large part of population who are partly confused, partly just unhappy with the government in Kiev, with what happened to them before, with the economic status, well, states, let's say, of the regions, who are just unhappy in general. And so they cannot support this government, but they don't really know where to go. And those are the people who claim protecting them. So they kind of, believe them partly, mainly.
All right. Among those weighing in on our conversation about what to do next, here's one reaction. Bring the Ukraine into the EU and set peace talks with Russia. All right. So probably in that order is the way I understand it. Ina Shevchenko, is it time to put down the guns?
Well, I'm definitely not the one who would say, yes, you have to answer with violence to the violence. But again, I think that the tries or their possibilities of having a negotiation and discussion with the side who intervened the territory of Ukraine. I will remind you still, Crimea is the question that is open. I don't think that we have to close this question. We don't have to look only on the east. We still have completely occupied territory of independent territory of Ukraine. There is Crimea. We don't have to forget about this. And I think that one of the main things that the new president will have to do is to bring back Crimea, that is a Ukrainian territory with Ukrainian population. So I do think that definitely, I agree with Anna that this group of separatists, they're a very small group. And this group have to be taken out from Ukraine. I don't support the military action and the military reaction, but I'm also not that brave enough to say that it's time to put guns on the floor right now. Right, because the day of election, many polls in the east of Ukraine were not working, not because people didn't go there, or not because those polls were not organized. Those polls were occupied by separatists. So I think that definitely the situation is, I think it's definitely correct to say in this situation that it's very easy to start a war, but it's very hard to finish it. And right now, it's definitely not, we don't see the way how to finish the war. And I will not be brave enough to say that, yes, Poroshenko has to start negotiation, because whoever it would be, Poroshenko or Yatsenyuk, who was trying to do it previous months, it didn't work. And right now, I think it's really ironic to see how Lavrov is demanding to stop the military action in the east of Ukraine. I will ask a rhetoric question: who did start the military action in Ukraine?
All right, and one of the other questions that we'll be asking when we come back is, who is the man who's been elected Ukraine's president? Stay with us. It's the France 24 debate.